Hello, psychology students. This is Mrs. Politsky, and I have your notes for Module 14, Prenatal and Childhood Development. And we're going to talk about social development. So, social development in infancy to childhood. There's something called stranger anxiety. This is something that a lot of children about age 8 months of age, maybe a little bit older, seem to experience. And it's usually about this period of time that a child who once maybe went to their loving relatives, didn't cry, didn't show any distress, become really attached to maybe people who are a little more familiar and start crying when they're handed off to a stranger. And part of this is something called attachment. Attachment is an emotional tie with another person shown by seeking closeness to the caregiver and showing distress upon separation. There have been many psychologists who have studied this, and one of those is a guy named Harry Harlow, who we're going to talk about. He tested the idea of bodily contact and this idea of attachment using infant monkeys to assess whether food or contact comfort of something cuddly was more important than attachment. And what he found is that the infant monkeys could choose between two artificial mothers. One was kind of made out of foam rubber covered with a nice soft terry cloth towel, and the other was bare barbed wire cylinder, but it also had nourishment. It had milk that the monkey could go to and nurse. The baby monkeys preferred the terry cloth mother, even though there was no nourishment there. Harlow surprised psychologists when he revealed that the infants' monkeys preferred to cuddle with the cuddly mother, even while feeding from the wire monkey mother. Human infants become attached to warm, soft parents who cuddle and rock and feed, and for the most part, that's part of the bonding, that part of that attachment. That even when mothers are in the hospital with their newborn babies, that nurses are looking for to make sure that there's no problems with this new bond. Attachment provides an infant with security or a secure base to which they can explore their environment. So, familiarity. A man that we're going to talk about here in just a little bit kind of focused in on this, but all of us have what we call a critical period. This is an optimal period shortly after birth when an organism is exposed to certain experiences that produce proper development. And Conrad Lorenz, who you see pictured below there with some of his goslings, did a little bit of research on the critical attachment in baby birds. And he came up with this concept called imprinting. And he found that ducklings, chicks, goslings, for the most part, had this ability to imprint, meaning that they follow the first moving object that they see. And typically that would be their mother, but in the case of Lorenz, it happened to be him and his black boots, as you can see pictured below. So imprinting is the process by which certain animals form attachments during a critical period in life. Following and staying close to mom provides safety and security and nourishment for these birds. Ducklings that imprinted on Lorenz's boots would follow those boots wherever they went, regardless of who was wearing them. Do humans have a similar critical period for attachment? And the answer is no. Babies who are adopted days or weeks or even months after their birth can become attached to new caregivers just as a child does to their birth parents. Responsiveness. Responsive parents are aware of what their child are doing, and certainly they are aware of pretty much everything that's going on, and they respond appropriately. Unresponsive parents often ignore their babies, helping them only when they feel like it. And Mary Ainsworth, who you see pictured below here, found that responsiveness appears to affect whether a child is securely or insecurely attached. So a securely attached child is a child who happily explores their environment, when their primary caregiver is around. An insecurely attached child is often very clingy. They're less likely to explore and to learn about their environment. When their caregiver leaves, they have a tendency to cry very loudly or to show indifference to the caregiver's departure and return. Another researcher, Daphne von den Bloom, in 1990 designed a study to assess the role of the environment in attachment. And she took about 100 temperamentally difficult babies and randomly assigned half of the um, group in which their mothers were receiving some kind of training on how to be responsive caregivers. The other half, or our control group, received no training. And a whopping 68% of the children whose mothers had received training were deemed securely attached. Effects of attachment. Secure attachment predicts social competence. Securely attached between 12 and maybe even 18 months of age were more likely to be outgoing, more confident, more persistent in solving challenging tasks when they were restudied again at the age of 2 and eventually age 3. Our issues about attachment also have helped us understand deprivation of attachment being linked to negative outcomes. So, like babies who grow up in institutions without a caregiver's regular stimulation and attention don't form normal attachments. A responsive environment helps most infants recover from attachment disruptions. So, children who have been neglected, who later are adopted between ages 6 and maybe 16 months, of age at first have trouble sleeping and eating and relating to new parents, but usually by the age 10, uh, these same kids show no adverse effects. Parenting problems. So, roughly 9 out of 10 people your age will eventually end up raising a kid. And Diane Baumrind was one of the first to describe the 3 main parenting styles. And so our first one is what we call the authoritarian. This is the kind of parent who imposes lots of rules and expects obedience, might be low in warmth, and their version of discipline is sometimes very strict and often very physical. We have permissive parents who are kind of the total opposite. They submit to their children's desires, they make very few demands, they don't punish. And then we have kind of the middle ground. We have the authoritative parent. And this is a parent that has demands on their children. They're responsive, they set and enforce rules, but they also discuss the reasoning behind their rules. Parents have kind of a high level of warmth, and their version of discipline is kind of moderate. Communication is high from not only parent, but also to the child and child back to the parent. Maturity is also involved here because expectations will moderate based on the age of the individual. So, according to Baumrind and others, authoritative parents often produce children of high self esteem, high self reliance, social competence, and these children are more likely to become successful, happy, and generous with others. Authoritative parents allow their children to develop a sense of control over their lives, and bolder children often need more restrictive parents, whereas a fearful child might respond better to a gentler parenting. Thank you very much.